Uncover 21 sinister stories to haunt your sleep. 3 hours of terrifying rain sounds revealed. The wind howled through Maplewood as raindrops tapped frantically against the windows. Sarah Harper curled up on the couch, clutching her cup of coffee like a lifeline. The warm glow of the living room barely reached the corners of her home, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. Just then, a flash of lightning illuminated a figure lurking outside her window. Panic surged through her chest. It was Mr. Jacobs, their neighbor. His smile was too wide, too unhinged. He waved. She forced a smile back. Was he just friendly, or was there something sinister lurking beneath the surface? As a nurse who often worked late hours, Sarah was used to the quiet nights when her 2 children, Emily and Ben, dreamt peacefully in their shared room. Yet an unsettling feeling etched itself into her thoughts, pulling at her during moments of solitude. Emily had been quiet lately, drawing pictures that seemed to capture more than childhood whimsy. The Man in the Window, the title scrawled across the top, sent ice through Sarah's veins. Life had a way of feeling safe and ordinary until one Tuesday when she found an anonymous note on her windshield. No one is safe. Her heart rattled in her chest. Surely just a prank? Yet the shiver that coursed through her didn't settle. Tossing it aside, exhaustion from her night shift seeped in. But when the second note appeared days later, inscribed in the same jagged handwriting, dread gnawed at her instincts. She reported them, but the authorities shrugged as if dismissing a bad joke. As thunder echoed like a warning bell, rain began to pour, an unnatural rhythm punctuating her solitude. That night, scratching echoed from the attic above, a noise that felt alive, clawing. Whispers slithered through the silence, chilling her bones. The next morning, her children played at the window, peering across the yard. "Look, Mommy, there's Mr. Jacobs," they chirped, but something felt dark, foreboding. Why were they drawn to him? Determined, Sarah delved into Mr. Jacobs' past, uncovering a forgotten schoolhouse cloaked in layers of decay. Each footstep echoed a warning, the floorboards creaking as if they clenched secrets from the ground beneath. Tales of missing children clung to the air like fog, and dread twisted her stomach. Had she let an unfathomable danger into her children's lives? Corners of old photographs flashed like ghosts, laughter trapped in faded snapshots. Suddenly Mr. Jacobs loomed in front of her, shadowy and sinister, the very embodiment of fear. "What do you want from me?" Sarah yelled, adrenaline surging like a tidal wave. His grin widened, eyes darkened, those same old photographs flashing in her mind. Children vanished without a trace. Terror struck hard, a primal instinct rising to the surface. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." With rain pouring down, her heart pounded like a war drum, propelling her through the storm, fighting against the growing shadows. She stumbled outside, breath quickening. Doubts gnawed, agony intensified. Mr. Jacobs loomed closer, and her children's laughter felt like an echo in the distance. As realization settled in, Sarah understood a predator was near, and her ordinary world was beginning to shatter. Would anyone in Maplewood emerge unscathed from the growing darkness tightening its grip? The rain drummed like 1,000 tiny hands on the roof, each drop a reminder that the storm wasn't the only danger prowling through the darkness. Sarah's pulse raced as she darted back inside, slamming the door shut, blocking out Mr. Jacobs' unsettling presence. She leaned against the wooden barrier, her breath coming in short gasps, trying to calm the storm within. Footsteps reverberated upstairs. Ben and Emily, oblivious to the terror that loomed just outside. Should she warn them? Or keep them sheltered in their innocence a little longer? She looked down the hallway, and an unsettling smell, a metallic odor, permeated the air. Had something happened in the attic? The scratching had stopped, but unease lingered around her like a thick fog. "Mommy!" Ben's voice echoed, high-pitched with glee. Can we go play outside with Mr. Jacobs? Not right now, sweetheart, she called frantically. Stay inside. But how could she explain? How could she put into words the dread that gnawed at her insides? A vision flickered in her mind, the photographs of those children, all smiles, and yet gone forever. Her heart sank. Sarah moved toward the kitchen, that bastion of memories filled with laughter and love. Yet her surroundings felt charged with a different kind of energy. As she opened the drawer for a knife to defend herself, her fingers trembled. She recalled the second note, "No one is safe." It echoed in her thoughts, a chilling mantra. Suddenly, the attic door creaked open. She froze, knife clutched tight. It felt like an invitation. A chill spread through her chest as she glanced up, half expecting to see a ghost, half hoping for nothing at all. But what emerged was worse silence. The attic stairs loomed, dark and open like a gaping mouth waiting to swallow her whole. She heard a muffled giggle from the children's room, an innocent bliss that seemed worlds away from her reality. She ascended the stairs slowly, each step a battle against crippling fear. The air turned cold and stale. Her heart beat louder than her thoughts. As she reached the attic door, it creaked open with an eerie slowness. A shaft of moonlight illuminated the dusty room, revealing old boxes and cobwebs. "Is anyone up here?" she whispered, her voice barely breaking the silence. No reply came. Only an oppressive darkness stared back at her. She took a deep breath, the smell of mildew thick in her nostrils. She stepped inside, glancing around, her heart thundering. There in the corner, her eyes caught something. A large, framed drawing leaned against the wall, its paper yellowed and frail. As she picked it up, horror struck her. It was one of Emily's pictures, the same drawing she had seen earlier. But now it was warped. The man in the window was no longer just a sketch. He seemed alive, his menacing eyes dull yet inexplicably sinister. The sound of giggling drifted from below, this time mixed with a shrill scream. Panic shot through her. It felt primal, the kind of fear that puts you into fight or flight mode. Sarah rushed down the stairs, her mind racing. She flung open the children's bedroom door, heart pounding, dread simmering. They were not there. The bed was empty, the toys scattered. Just then, a final crash echoed from outside, followed by a voice that sent shivers down her spine, whispery and close. "Come out to play, Sarah." In an instant, everything collapsed. The world around her blurred, and she was drowning in darkness. Had she fallen into a trap? What had Mr. Jacobs done? Standing frozen at the threshold, her breath caught in her throat, she realized there was no safety left. The storm raged outside, but it was nothing compared to the tempest brewing within her. As she staggered back, the laughter echoed again, morphing into something darker, and she could only hold on tight. What awaited her in the night? All she knew was that she had to move, and fast. Time was slipping away, and as the whispers grew, she felt the walls closing in. Dread settled like lead in her stomach as one chilling thought surfaced. What if this was all part of the game? The laughter twisted through the air, a cacophony of delight that morphed into something sinister. Sarah's heart raced as she stood in the doorway, frozen by terror. She glanced at the scattered toys on the floor, reminders of childhood happiness turned ominous in their stillness. "Ben! Emily!" Her voice trembled, the echo hollow in the empty room. No answer. Just the incessant drumming of rain against the windows. Each drop felt like a countdown, sealing her fate. She needed to find them. The house felt monstrous now, a labyrinth designed for dread. She rushed down the hall, each step weighted by anxiety. The smell of iron in the air grew stronger, unsettling her stomach. What had happened here? What lurked in the shadows? She paused at the living room door, the darkness beyond pulsating like a heartbeat. "Please, please," her whispers fell flat. She pushed the door open, praying for a glimmer of light, a sign of her children. Instead, she was greeted by emptiness. The furniture, once familiar, took on grotesque shapes. The curtains billowed as the wind howled outside, and for a moment she thought she saw a figure through the glass, the outline of a man, fleeting and indistinct. "Mr. Jacob," she mumbled, a chill creeping down her spine. Suddenly, thunder roared, shaking the foundation. The lights flickered and died, plunging her into suffocating darkness. She blinked, straining to see, her heart thudding wildly in her chest. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but she couldn't. She had to find them. Ben! Emily! The names burst from her lips like desperate prayers. Another laugh, this one tinged with menace, slithered through the space. It clawed at her resolve. She took a step back, and then another, retreating into the hallway, wiping clammy hands on her jeans. The attic door hung ajar, its silhouette etched against the faint glow from the room behind her. Was it calling her? She couldn't bear the thought of whatever was up there. Yet, as uncertainty gnawed at her, the thought of leaving the children alone drove her forward. Taking a deep breath, she ascended the steps, the wood creaking beneath her weight, each step pulling her deeper into the unknown. The stale air enveloped her. The attic loomed larger than life, an abyss filled with nightmares. The angle of light fell on the drawings she had seen earlier. It flickered like a flame, almost alive. She approached it cautiously, her pulse echoing in her ears. The man's eyes seemed to follow her, drawing her in. Thud! A noise sliced through the attic, like a distant crash, and she turned sharply. The sound had come from the direction of the other side of the room. Gathering courage, she moved towards the sound, driven by the swelling dread that her children were closer than she imagined. A heavy box teetered on the edge of a shelf. She reached out instinctively to steady it, but as her fingers brushed the surface, the box fell with a deafening crash, revealing a collection of dolls, each one with dark, hollow eyes. It was a jarring sight, filling her with icy dread. They were dressed in clothes reminiscent of other times, their smiles too wide, too frozen. "Mommy, help!" The voice, a whisper, so faint yet so urgent, fractured the stillness and shot through her, pulling her focus. Her heart pounded even louder as she turned back toward the stairs, every instinct screaming at her to flee. But she couldn't leave. Not without her children. A breeze swept across the attic, carrying with it a whisper that chilled her to the bone. "They're just playing, come join us." Sarah staggered backward, the weight of dread pressing down on her. Dark shadows danced at the edge of her vision, morphing, twisting like living nightmares. The walls felt as though they were closing in. "Where are you?" she shouted, raw desperation in her voice. With a sudden burst of courage, she lunged toward the attic door, tossing it wide open only to recoil in sheer horror. Outside, laughing, a sea of twisted faces, flickering against the rain-soaked windows, eyes glossed with a strange darkness. They were children, all of them, and they looked straight at her, their faces unrecognizable in an unsettling, malevolent grin. "Come play, Sarah! Come play with us!" The laughter crescendoed, and she felt herself slipping away, grasping at sanity as the energy from the storm coursed through her. The door slammed shut behind her, the earth shook, and in that moment, reality warped. What had she unleashed? What darkness awaited her in the shadows? She steeled herself, whispering a silent promise, she'd do anything to save them. But could she survive the game that was just beginning? The laughter melted into silence, leaving behind a suffocating emptiness. Heart pounding, Sarah staggered away from the door, every fiber in her being urging her to escape the clutches of that menacing sound. The attic felt like a tomb, heavy with secrets, and she sensed there was something in the shifting shadows, a presence watching her. "Ben! Emily!" Her voice wavered, strained against the growing dread. No response, only the relentless patter of rain, each drop a taunt, reminding her of her failure. She glanced back toward the attic door, whispering, "I have to find you." The urgency in her heart propelled her forward, deeper into the suffocating gloom. The dolls surrounded her, lifeless and hollow-eyed, as if waiting for their moment. The malicious energy in the room pressed against her skin. She felt their gaze, their impatient whispers, "Come play with us," echoing in her mind. "No!" She shook her head, trying to dispel the creeping madness. "Stop it!" she yelled, clutching a doll with a cracked porcelain face. Its cracked lips stretched into a mocking smile. Sickening warmth coursed through her fingers, and she dropped it as if it burned. It landed softly, other dolls shifting slightly closer, a subtle but deliberate movement, like a hungry pack closing in. Darkness thickened around her as shadows flickered in her peripheral vision. She backed toward the staircase, eyes darting. Was it just her fear, or were they forming shapes? A figure moved at the perimeter of her sight, stepping silently into the faint light. "Mommy, help!" The voice wafted toward her again, stronger this time. Hope mingled with panic. "Ben! Is that you?" She turned sharply, eyes scanning for the source. Nothing. The attic creaked inside, as if alive and well aware of her terror. She felt the anger rising inside her, an instinctual need to fight back. "I'm not afraid of you," she yelled at the shadows. The walls vibrated with her denial, feeding the darkness. Suddenly, the laughter erupted again, penetrating her resolve. It surrounded her, enveloping her like a smothering blanket of taunts and jeers. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears trickling down her cheeks as she fought against the rising tide of despair. "Leave them alone!" she screamed, her voice breaking. For an instant, silence fell again, and in it, she clutched at the remnants of her sanity. Then the attic door swung open. Wind howled through the crack, bringing with it the scent of damp earth and something acrid, like burned metal. Shadows poured in, swirling around her, taunting her from every corner. Her breath quickened in anticipation, terror holding her captive. "Come play," they whispered in unison, a chilling chorus that filled the air with dread. She stumbled back, losing her footing on the attic's dusty floor, and before she could regain her balance, she crashed into the pile of dolls. They tumbled around her, their hollow eyes reflecting the feeble light as they closed in, the air thickening with malevolence. Then, a different voice emerged from the chaos, sharp, piercing. "Sarah! Help me!" It was Ben. Her heart leapt, new energy flooding her veins, but it was cut short by fear. She had to find him. "Where are you?" she shouted, her pulse leaping as the other voice faded into the cacophony of laughter, echoing through the hollow wooden beams. "Up here! In the attic! We're waiting for you!" It was Emily, her precious girl, now lost among the specters of the lost children. "No! You're not lost! I'm coming!" Sarah fought through the swirling darkness, dodging the grasping hands of her fears, her pulse matching the thunder outside. As she reached the attic's edge where the darkness deepened, the laughter transformed, growing sharper and more sinister. Sarah lunged forward, desperation fueling her, but the attic seemed to distort. Shadows elongated, stretching, clawing at her as they bellowed with laughter. "Join us forever," the words slashed through her, paralyzing her. She felt icy fingers brushing against her back, clinging, pulling her toward the darkness. "Ben! Emily!" she cried again, voice hoarse with panic. Still scrambling backward, the energy surged again, feeding her will to survive. She lunged for the stairs, breaths burning in her chest, when laughter erupted once more, a cacophony of lost souls, and then silence. Something was wrong. The ground felt different beneath her feet, the air changing as the shadows coalesced into a thick fog. "Mommy!" a sing-song voice called out, sweet yet laced with cruelty, drifting on the chill breeze, promising the end to her search. Then she heard a crash, a shattering of glass, and the attic trembled, the only warning before everything plunged into darkness. Play echoed softly, wrapping around her like a noose, and then nothing. Sarah stood alone, the laughter drowned beneath a sudden stillness, a looming darkness threatening to swallow her whole. What had she unleashed upon her family? Was there any hope of finding them now, or was the darkness too powerful to fight off? Cold seeped into Sarah's bones, an insatiable chill wrapped in shadows, whispering promises of despair. She blinked, struggling against the dark. Her breath came quick and shallow, splitting the stillness like a frail lamp flickering against the storm. "Ben! Emily!" The words bubbled from her chest, desperate, pleading. Every silence crushed her spirit a little more, deepening the void around her. She felt adrift in a sea of shadows, the weight of her cries swallowed whole. Fingers trembling, she brushed them against the attic wall, feeling for something solid, something real. The surface was coarse, alive with the lurking energy of the things that came before her. Each heartbeat drummed in her ears as she edged forward, stepping cautiously over remnants of shattered glass, the rain tapping a relentless rhythm above, a macabre symphony to her descent into chaos. Her foot struck something soft and yielding. A doll. Cold dread crawled up her spine as she quickly straightened, flicking her gaze to the pile that had come alive moments ago. But they lay still again, as if nothing had happened at all. Deceitful little things. Mommy helped the voice cut through the murk, soft, almost like an echo bouncing back from a memory long forgotten. It drew her in, begging her to follow, but dread latched onto her throat. Was it a trick? Stay away! She shouted into the abyss, but her voice trembled, betraying her fear. She couldn't tell if she was talking to the false voices or the toys, which seemed to breathe, watching her with their empty eyes. The laughter, once a distant murmur, crawled back into her mind. Join us, it taunted, crawling over the surface of her mind like an unwelcome fog. She pressed forward anyway. I'm coming! I'll find you! She shouted, hoping against hope that they could hear her. The attic creaked and groaned, responding as if enraged. She could feel the floor shudder beneath her, the old beams complaining as shadows danced along the edges. She turned her head, catching fleeting movements that sent shivers down her spine. Then she heard a shuffling noise, a scraping sound against the floor. It came from the direction of the broken window. Mommy, please. The voice was clearer now, insistent, promising safety, but marked by an underlying sense of dread. Sarah felt compelled to look. She stepped closer to the window, peering into the abyss swarming outside. The rain lashed harder now, sweeping wisps of shadow that reached for her, grasping along the edges of her vision. The world outside felt just as trapped as she did, caught in a cycle of despair. The air thickened, a suffocating presence that pressed down on her chest. No, I won't let you, she managed to whisper, shaking her head, fighting back tears. Let us play. The chorus returned, this time more menacing, coiling around her like heavy chains, dragging her back into the depths. The shadows flickered in anticipation. She squeezed her eyes shut, pushing against the tide of fear that threatened to drown her. Could she beat this? Deep within her, a flicker of defiance sparked. She needed to fight. With renewed determination, she opened her eyes. Stop it! You can't have them! The laughter subsided abruptly, startled by her ferocity. A heavy silence fell, a pause pregnant with tension, as if the attic itself was holding its breath. Then the air shifted. A low, rumbling growl echoed from an unseen place. The dolls stirred again, their porcelain faces shifting to grotesque grins, eyes gleaming with a hunger that was almost human. Mommy, the voice transformed, growing deeper, almost mocking, merging with the guttural sound that filled the darkness. A figure began to emerge, a shadow taking shape in the corners of her mind, rising with a menacing aura. Sarah gasped, dread coiling tightly in her stomach. Her instincts screamed for her to run, but she stood frozen, rooted to the floor as it loomed closer, the stench of decay filling the air. Come play with us, it breathed, each word a slithering promise of eternal despair. No! The defiance surged deep within. She would not be taken, yet. As the figure stepped into the dim light, a familiar face emerged, twisted, yet hauntingly known. It was Emily. Mommy, we've been waiting for you. Sarah's world tilted on its axis, hope and terror colliding within her. Emily! No! The shadows twisted, and suddenly, everything fell into chaos. Was it really Emily, or a darker echo of her child? The laughter returned, louder, drowning her thoughts as Sarah reached desperately for the truth. Would she reclaim her children, or would the darkness claim them all? As the shadows prepared their final embrace, a piercing scream shattered the oppressive silence, ripping through the darkness and leaving her on the brink of revelation. What awaited in the depths of this attic? Was help truly within reach, or a trap laid for her? The shadows swirled, thickening like smoke around Sarah as she struggled to regain her bearings. Emily, she murmured, trying to decipher the blurred line between this grotesque echo and her true child. The air pulsed with tension, each heartbeat ringing in her ears like a war drum. Mommy! It was a wail, high-pitched and desperate, Yet the familiarity twisted into something else, something insidious. The figure before her writhed, casting a silhouette that seemed to split into darker fragments, disintegrating and then reconstructing like an unholy puzzle. The haunting visage of Emily grinned unnervingly as shadows clawed at Sarah's resolve. "Get away!" Sarah shouted, feeling adrenaline surge, but her voice barely cut through the storm brewing within and outside. The rain rattled against the broken window like an orchestra of despair, echoing her own turmoil. The grotesque dolls now shifted, their smiles widening, mouths gaping, as though preparing for a feast. Before she could process her fear, a chill swept through the room, biting at her skin. The darkness thrummed with a pulsing energy, alive and hungry. Sarah felt the instinct to flee clawing at her. Yet between the broken glass and the hungry shadows, what awaited beyond was equally terrifying. "Mommy, come play," Emily taunted, her voice layered with something cold that twisted her heart. The words congealed, trapping Sarah in a void of impossible choices. She didn't recognize the child calling for her. Instinctively, she took a step back, but the floorboards beneath creaked ominously, protesting her movement. It felt like the house was alive, each whisper and rustle feeding the hunger of the shadows. "No, this isn't real," she cried out, fighting the rising desperation. "Why don't you stay? Why run from us? We only want to play." The voices rose, churning like a tempest, confusing her senses as laughter filled her mind, mocking, beckoning. Sarah's hands trembled, the haunting quality of those words curling around her thoughts like a snake. She sucked in a deep breath, aware of one sobering truth: she had to fight. "Enough!" she yelled, the command echoed back to her, distorted yet carrying the weight of defiance. For an instant, everything stilled. Darkness rippled and recoiled as if Sarah's words had struck a match in deep water. Then, with an ear-splitting screech, the dolls surged forward, their painted eyes glinting manically, and a wave of shadows crashed over her, enveloping her with suffocating force. A flash of something flickered into being, another glimpse of Emily, but clearer, more defined. "Help me, Mommy! Please!" The raw fear in her voice cut through Sarah's soul, igniting her will. "Hang on, baby! I'm coming!" She charged into the throng, heart thundering, a primal scream escaping her lips. But the darkness coiled around her legs, pulling her down, the floor sinking under her weight as the dolls seized the moment, tugging at her like ravenous creatures. "Leave her alone!" Sarah shrieked, twisting, but the laughter turned into howling winds that roared around her, blending reality with nightmarish echoes. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the attic for a brief moment, revealing something that made her skin crawl: a figure crouched in the corner, darker than the shadows, eyes burning with malignant hunger, its own hands slowly reaching for the dolls. "Join us," it hissed, and the room seemed to swell with a collective gasp, as if the house itself feared the entity's hunger. But Sarah pushed against the stolen air, summoning all her strength. "You don't own me!" she shouted, grappling with the shadows around her. As the entity's grip tightened, ripping her away from the glimmer of hope, a distant scream followed in a wave of anguish. The sound radiated deeply within the cavern of her chest, sending ripples of terror through her being. "Mommy, please!" Emily echoed again, as if the world were tipping, forcing Sarah between two impossible paths of light and darkness. There, amidst the chaos, a sudden clarity sprung forth, a realization clawed through the haze. Perhaps there was a way to confront the shadows, a truth to unveil, but it would demand everything she had left. As the spectre lunged, cloaked in malice, Sarah found herself at the crossroads of desperation and courage. But were the very shadows they warred against offering a truth she wasn't ready to accept? Or was the fight going to drag them all into an abyss from which there could be no return? In that moment of realization, the world around her shifted. The attic trembled, and she stood on the edge of a terrifying revelation. What if Emily wasn't just a child lost in darkness? What if she was a key to a nightmare that had only just begun? The weight of the darkness pressed against Sarah like a tangible force, threatening to crush every shred of her resistive spirit. She felt the spectre closing in, its presence weaving around her, mocking her defiance. "Join us," it whispered again, mingled voices rising and falling like a sickening tide, trying to drown her in despair. "Stop!" she cried, the word barely escaping her lips as icy fingers gripped her throat. The walls of the attic closed in, warping the reality around her, the air thick with an unrelenting dread. The flickering light outside cast grotesque shadows, and in that brief moment of illumination, she saw Emily again. The child stood there, wide-eyed, but the innocence had been twisted, her features distorted in the farthest corners of Sarah's mind. "Mommy, please help me. Just hold on." Panic surged beneath her skin, a rush of adrenaline igniting her instincts to rescue her child from whatever horror enveloped them. But the grip of the darkness tightened. The dolls, loathsome and grinning, now moved closer, their painted faces crawling with life, seeking to wring out her remaining strength. They surrounded her, a mass of vibrant colors against the suffocating black. With a savage twist, she kicked at the nearest doll, feeling the hard porcelain crack against her foot. Its laughter turned into a shriek, sending a wave of fury through Sarah, fueling her will. She wouldn't be swallowed whole. She wouldn't let Emily's cries fade into nothingness. "Tell me how!" she shrieked into the void, desperation coloring her voice. The shadows stilled, as if considering her question, their teasing whispers coiling tighter around her. "Embrace the truth," the figure in the corner hissed, stepping into a flickering light. Its true form flickered in and out, a nightmare born of sinew and despair. The eyes burned with an ancient hunger, promising to show her the way if only she would surrender. Did it hold the key to save her child? The thought threatened to unravel her. There was power in that darkness, a twisted parody of affection, and for a sickening moment she considered what it might mean to accept it. "Mommy," the voice shifted again, softening, laced with heartache that held echoes of Emily's laughter, now haunting and sinister. "I just want to play. What else could it offer? Was it a trap?" Her heart raced, the walls of the attic pulsed in time with her own panic. She stifled her fear. "I'm not afraid of you. I'll find my way." But the entity laughed, a cruel sound that reverberated through every nook and cranny of the old house. "You think you can stand against what you cannot understand?" In that instant, a surge of dark energy erupted from the floor, encasing her in a cocoon of dread, a swirling mass of hatred, lying in wait beneath the veneer of their sickly sweet game. Each scream pierced through the monolithic silence, a shrill cacophony. The wind kicked up outside, rattling the windows as if the house itself were recoiling from the endless tide of evil amassed within its walls. "Emily! I'm coming!" she roared defiantly, surging forward through the blackness, desperate to wrap her arms around her child once more. Each step felt monumental, like trudging through quicksand. With every ounce of her strength, she fought back against the encroaching darkness, clawing her way toward the faint glimmer of hope illuminating her path. But then, shimmering in the distance, a doorway opened bright and beckoning like a siren's song. What awaited her on the other side? As she approached, the shadows whispered louder, a sinister chorus mocking her pursuit. Were they offering freedom? Or betrayal? The choice loomed before her, as the air crackled with electric tension. With one last glance at the twisting darkness behind her, she stepped through, uncertain of the fragile hope that lingered like a candle in a storm. And just as she crossed the threshold, a piercing scream echoed back from the shadows, cutting through her heart, a sound that sealed the impending dread of what lay ahead. What if stepping into that light unleashed something even worse than the darkness she had tried to escape? The light engulfed her, a blinding white that seemed to erase the shadows as she tumbled through. The moment she crossed into the unfamiliar space, a wave of heat crashed over her, drowning out the cold remnants of the attic. But freedom came at a cost. As soon as her feet met solid ground, she stumbled into a twisted version of her home. The walls, once familiar, now loomed with grotesque portraits of Emily throughout different stages of her life, each painted in a mocking, distorted style. The air hung thick with a heavy, sickly sweet perfume that clawed at her throat, threatening to stifle her breath. "Mommy?" The voice was unmistakable, echoing with the rolling contours of a child's uncertainty, yet shadowed by an eerie tone that made her skin crawl. It was Emily, but not her Emily. In this house of nightmares, she felt palpable eyes on her watching, judging, waiting. She could sense the shadows creeping, slithering from the corners, whispering secrets about their wicked intentions. "Emily!" she cried out, her voice laced with the quaking tremors of desperation. She tried to run, but the ground beneath her feet felt alive, shifting and breathing, pulling her down into its depths. Every step felt like wading through molasses, the weight of the unseen forces pushing against her. "Down here, Mommy!" The voice was now a sing-song taunt, floating through the claustrophobic hallway, twisting through her mind like a deadly vine. The walls shuddered. The portraits seemed to watch her, their painted eyes flickering, as if they were alive with a malevolent spirit. "Emily, I'm coming!" She pressed on despite her heart hammering insistently in her chest, urging her to turn back. But she needed to believe in the possibility that this was a game, and if she played her part well enough, she might still save her child. Then a low creaking echoed through the darkness, growing louder until it seemed to pulse alongside her heartbeat. Ahead, a doorway cracked open, revealing a fading light that whispered of warmth and safety. But something in that light felt wrong. As if it was a facade, a polished display that might shatter with the slightest touch. What lay beyond that door? A chance to reclaim her daughter? Or something far more sinister? She could almost see forms moving behind the light, featureless shadows with elongated limbs stretching toward her as if they sought to welcome her home. The whispers grew louder, transforming into a cacophony, swirling, beckoning her to join. But the idea gnawed at her. Accepting any invitation from the darkness might mean surrendering not just to the nightmare, but to despair. "Sarah, join us." They were not just voices but fragmented memories of her own anguish, twisted pieces of love turned to dread. The figures reached out, forming a line, taunting her with smiles that were not smiles at all. "Mommy!" The word echoed, an enticing lull that filled her with conflicting emotions. It crawled beneath her skin, making it hard to breathe, pulling her toward that glimmer of light even as she fought against it. "Stop!" Sarah screamed, her voice ragged, but resolve surged within her. She wouldn't give in to the madness. Not now. Not ever. With a fierce determination, she turned from the door and dashed back the way she came. Every instinct screamed at her as the sinister whispers intensified, battering against her mind with a deafening roar. Shadows lashed out, trying to pull her back into their grasp. Fingers clawed at her, and Sarah staggered. The portraits shifted, angling toward her, their painted eyes now alight with a cruel hunger. "Mommy, don't leave me!" But she couldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. The darkness closed in fast, constricting her thoughts, muddling her vision. The air felt electric, charged with the anticipation of something unspeakable. As she stumbled into the twisted hallway again, a mirror caught her glance, distorting her reflection. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, the shadows fused to form a single figure, dark and forbidding. As it stepped closer, she could see its face, a sick parody of Emily's. A smile stretched too wide, far too unnatural, revealing rows of sharpened teeth. "Join us," its voice beckoned again, twisted and familiar. And with a roar of rage, Sarah faced the specter that had once been her daughter. What truth would she discover next? What could be worse than the darkness she had already faced? Sarah's breath hitched in her throat as the creature stepped forward, its eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. It was as if Emily's sweet, innocent spirit had been hollowed out, leaving only a grotesque imitation behind, a puppet animated by darkness. "Mommy," it crooned again, the words sliding through the air like poison, infecting the space around them. "You wanted me back, didn't you?" A flood of memories crashed over Sarah, suffocating her in a wave of anguish. The laughter they used to share, the bedtime stories, and the warmth of Emily resting in her arms. But this was not her daughter. The smile on its face was wrong, a twisted distortion of love that transformed kindness into malice. "No," she breathed, trembling as she stepped backward, the shadows pulsing with delight around her. The walls leaned in, seeming to swell and breathe, aching for her surrender. "You're not my Emily!" The tortured laughter that erupted from the specter chilled her core. "I'm what you brought here, Mommy. You called me forth. You should feel honored." Light flickered, and for a heartbeat, the hall appeared as it once had their home, alive with familiar warmth. But with the next blink, the haunting visage returned, the comforting image shattered like glass. The portraits jeered at her, their eyes swirling with malicious glee. "Run, Sarah," she whispered to herself, her voice trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. But her feet felt anchored to the ground, as if the very boards were imbued with a malevolent spirit, holding her captive. "Join us," the creature hissed once more, the shadows around it writhing and reaching as if eager for her touch. They promised her the impossible, a reunion with her daughter. "No! Not like this," she cried out, shaking her head wildly, trying to dispel the allure of a deceptive fantasy. The warmth of memory flooded her senses, pulling her closer. Emily, the real Emily, would want her to fight. A primal scream erupted from her throat, raw and desperate. "Get away from me!" The darkness recoiled, momentarily stunned. She seized the opportunity, turning on her heels. Her heart whirred like a frantic engine as she dashed down the corridor, lengthening her strides, battling against the tug of the shadows that clawed at her. Each step echoed in her ears, a reminder that she was alive, that she needed to escape this hell. But the laughter followed, a haunting melody that swirled around her like fog. "You can't run away, Mommy. You're part of this now." Sarah burst into a new room, eyes darting wildly. Dim light glinted off glass cabinets filled with dusty trophies, remnants of a life that felt both familiar and alien. A soft whisper floated through the air, weaving through her mind, a loved one's touch that left a tingling sensation. "Help me, Mommy!" Frantically, she searched for an escape. Maybe there was a window, a crack she could slip through. But behind her came the sound of heavy footsteps, persistent and unyielding. She froze as the silhouette of the figure darkened the doorway, its form swirling with shadows like smoke. "I found you," it taunted, inching closer, teeth gleaming in a twisted snarl. "We can be together again." Her pulse quickened. She had to act. With a surge of adrenaline, she flung a trophy at the figure, the glass shattering upon impact, sending shards dancing through the air. "Stop!" Sarah shouted, feeling a rush of defiance. "Leave me alone!" But as the sound of glass clattered to the floor and the darkness shuddered, uncertainty gripped her heart. Had she made it worse? Had she only given them more power? The figure paused, its featureless face tilting in contemplation, its smile freezing into an eerie mask. What twisted secrets awaited Sarah in this darkened home? Was escape even possible, or would she become yet another lost soul, forever trapped in the shadows? The air shimmered with tension, thick as the weight of uncertainty hung in the heavy silence. Sarah's heart raced as she backed away from the creature, its features flickering with rage and mockery. It was as if the very shadows twisted in delight, hungry for her fear. "You want to take me?" she shouted, her voice trembling yet defiant, her fierce love for Emily igniting a fire inside her. The figure lunged, but Sarah was ready now. She dashed sideways, adrenaline propelling her as the darkness clawed at her heels, desperate to pull her back into its void. As she sprinted through the corridor, she could hear the laughter echoing, twisted and distorted, rising like a storm. Each taunt crackled through the air, promising despair, promising to swallow her whole. "Mommy! Help me!" Emily's voice rang out again, but this time, it was layered with a crystalline clarity that cut through the chaos. "Emily! I'm coming!" Shouting back, Sarah barreled into another room, desperately searching for her daughter. The walls around her pulsed, alive with an evil energy, and every painting seemed to shift, their dark gazes following her, laughing mockingly. But no. She couldn't afford to let them drown her in despair. She spotted a window, the light beckoned from beyond the barricade of shadows. She lunged toward it, the glass shimmering like hope. A gust of wind whipped through her hair, and she could smell freedom just beyond the veil of suffocating gloom. "Together!" The voice called again, this one soft yet haunting. Was it Emily? Or the wickedness wearing her face? "No! You're not my daughter!" Sarah screamed, pressing her palms against the cool surface of the glass, feeling the strength of the outside world against her. "I want to let you in. Emily needs me." The shadows danced around her, swirling with restless energy. She ripped the curtains aside, sunlight spilling through, igniting the room in a bright blaze that cut through the dark. In that moment, the entities recoiled, their screeches reverberating as they faltered in the face of the light. Sarah seized the chance. "Where are you, Emily?" she called out, her own voice resonating against the walls. "Stay where you are. I'll find you." But just as she turned to escape back into the hallway, she froze. Standing there, illuminated by the slivers of light creeping from the window, was Emily, her hair a halo from the sunlight, a frightened expression on her face. Relief surged through Sarah, but it was tinged with dread. The Emily before her looked real, but the atmosphere pulsed with a deceptive promise. "Mommy! I'm scared." Her little girl reached out, her voice trembling, but it twisted into something darker. "Just come play with me, no!" Sarah shouted, squeezing her eyes shut to banish the creeping shadows. "You're not my Emily! You're not real!" The laughter escalated, a torrent of whispers that enveloped her, but she clung to the image of her daughter, fiery love exploding in her heart. "You can't have my children! I am their mother!" She thrust out her hands, drenched in the fierce glow of determination that filled that room. The shadows writhed, their screeches piercing as they were swallowed by the light. Ben's voice joined in, echoing softly, a fragile plea that made her blood run cold. "Mommy, help!" Her breath almost caught in her throat. "Ben!" She couldn't let herself be ensnared. No matter the cost, she wasn't about to lose them. Gathering her courage, Sarah flung the window open wide. Sunlight poured in, washing away the last remnants of despair. It surged like a wave, washing over her, igniting her willpower against the darkness that threatened to consume them all. "You will not win!" With one last look at the lurking shadows trying to engulf her, Sarah leapt through the window, the rush of wind igniting her spirit as she flew into the light. The world spun around her, a vibrant burst of colors and warmth, as laughter echoed behind her, fading, shrieking in defeat. She felt solid ground beneath her feet as the oppressive shadows fell behind, losing their grip in the brightness. With an overwhelming sense of hope, she turned around, ready to find her children. The thrill of life surged through her as she raced back toward the house, her house. And there they were, Emily and Ben, safe and unharmed, emerging from the door, their smiles a beacon. "Mommy!" they cried, rushing into her arms, and she wrapped them tight, fear fading into warmth and love. "I'm here! I'm here!" she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks as she held them close, breathing in the scent of childhood, of safety. But the whispers still lingered at the edge of her mind, the shadows yearning to reclaim what they had lost. Sarah steeled herself as she looked back at the house. "You'll never take my children," she promised. "I'll fight for them forever." And together they turned away from the darkness, stepping forward into a new dawn, ready to embrace the light. As the sun flooded over Maplewood, they walked hand in hand, their hearts united, ready to face whatever would come next. Because love and the fight for it was worth every shadow, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm with your passion. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And don't forget, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this story end.